This is the Garden of English. I'm Tim Freitas, and we're going to continue talking about scaffolding, that rhetorical situation. And today we're going to just talk about the speaker and the audience. So stick around. All right, as we begin this video, I want to give a huge shout out to the Garden of English's Patreon supporters. You're going to see their names right up here, okay? And if you are interested in supporting the Garden of English on Patreon, you can actually check out how to do that right down below here. That's showing up right at the bottom of your screen. On top of that, I always want to give a huge shout out to Parlay, as they, in particular, have been really working to support the Garden of English, especially over this past summer when I was doing a few new things. And so I'm going to give them a huge shout out. Not shootout, shout out. There's no violence here. But I want to give them a shout out. And the reason why is just because I'm so grateful for their support. And I really appreciate their product and what they offer. And the Garden of English actually has a full set of lessons for AP Lang up on Parlay if you're looking for ways to actually supplement your classroom instruction with some online interactive forums and whatnot. So you should check that out. And you can access a link to that right down below. Anyway, a couple of videos ago, I started talking about how to scaffold rhetorical analysis and or scaffolding the teaching of rhetoric, right? And I mentioned how a lot of teachers do this by jumping right into ethos, pathos, and logos, and I don't think that's actually the best way to do so. And you can actually check out the video right there, so I don't have to do a huge review. But one of the things that I forgot to mention in that video was that the reason why I encourage you to start with context and exigence, or any teacher to start with context and exigence, is because that's the basis of the rhetorical situation. And it's really important because rhetoric itself is using language to construct meaning. And with a definition like that, we've got language, which is anything that's concrete that conveys meaning. And then we've got the idea of meaning, which is actually an abstraction. So that means that rhetoric is always involving the concrete and the abstract. So I had mentioned starting with talking about context and exigence. And the reason why is because context is rather abstract, but exigence is almost always incredibly precise and concrete. And so what that means is for this video, when we talk about speaker and audience, we're going to always want to do everything the same way. Whenever you talk about anything rhetoric with students, or if you're a student, whenever you think about anything rhetorical, you need to always think about the concrete and abstract together. You can never have one without the other. So what does that mean? Well, it means this. When you're teaching your students how to deal with the speaker of a text, or if you're a student and you're trying to learn how to conceptualize a speaker of a text, what is not being asked of you is to just identify that speaker's name. If I'm reading the Gettysburg Address, I do not want to know that it's just Abraham Lincoln, okay? When you are actually looking for the speaker in a text, you want to be able to read the text, not the italics before it, because in life, there are no italics that are above people's heads or anything like that, right? You want to be able to read the text, and you want to be able to say to yourself, okay, who is this speaker, right, by name? Or maybe it's an entity, so because of that, it's like, what's the company, or who's the company that's speaking? But you also want to be able to look in the text and make justifiable claims about the values of that speaker, about the character qualities of that speaker. And that's going to be the incredibly precise reading skills that you're trying to develop when you think about rhetoric in and of itself. Now, you might say to yourself, but I think ethos, pathos, and logos are important, and I know that ethos is tied to the speaker. Yeah, that's all well and good. The problem is that you can't understand anything about ethos unless you understand all elements of the rhetorical situation. You actually can't understand ethos until you understand the audience as well. And so because of that, you need to be able to understand the audience's role with the speaker in the context because of the exigence, and all of this actually intermixes. And this is why I don't use any acronyms in my classroom. I don't use Soapstone. I don't use Space Cat. And the reason why is because I feel like that separates things out for my students. And instead, I want them to see how everything is interrelated. And the ethos, the pathos, and the logos, right, aren't going to be as interrelated without a full understanding of the rhetorical situation. So the rhetorical situation has to come first. So when you think about the speaker, you want to think about the speaker in concrete terms. What is the speaker's name? Super cool, okay? But we also want to know the character of the speaker. And when you say to yourself, well, how do I figure that out? You need to read. And when you read, and you can say, I think I know something about the speaker because of this particular line, you need to jot that down. And now you are providing the analysis that you're looking for because you have concrete language that convey an abstract element about the speaker's character. And so you're navigating the concrete and the abstract, so you know that the rhetoric is being done well. On top of that, not only do you want to think about the speaker, though, while you're reading, you want to think about the audience. And when you think about the audience, you want to think about the audience's values and needs and backgrounds and beliefs. But you need to say, okay, the speaker or the writer has produced this piece. What are the values, beliefs, backgrounds, and needs of the audience that he or she thinks are being addressed in this piece? So what that means now is that while you read that concrete language in front of you, and when we say concrete, we're talking about things that you can experience with your senses, of course, right? When you read that language in front of you, if you get to the end of a line or a few lines and you're like, oh my word, I think I can now make this particular judgment about the audience. Good, that's what we want. I can make this judgment about the audience's background. I can make this judgment about the audience's beliefs. I can make this judgment about the audience's needs or values. Perfect, because once you make that judgment, you have now made a claim and you have the concrete evidence to back it up. We also want to make sure, though, that when we think about our audience, we can name our audience in more concrete terms. So I might say the audience is full of good people or ordinary people. Fine, that's nice and abstract, but can you give me a little bit more? How precise can you get? Because we want to be able to identify the concrete audience as well. And so because of that, while you go through things, you want to make sure I could say, who's the audience concretely? Let's go back to the Gettysburg Address, right? The concrete audience was indeed the people standing in front of Abraham Lincoln as he dedicated a graveyard. That's it, right? But then you want to move into their backgrounds, values, beliefs, and needs. And then you can try to say, okay, how does the abstract values of the speaker line up with the abstract values of the audience? And I think that you're going to notice that there's going to be a lot of overlap there. And then when you look at those ideas about those values and backgrounds of the speaker and the audience and what they believe, you're going to notice that a lot of those ideas show up in the context of the conversation as well. And you're going to start seeing how all of these things are interrelated. So that's my second video about the rhetorical situation. And I encourage you to start with context and exigence, thinking about that as context being abstract, exigence being concrete. Think about the speaker on concrete and abstract terms. Think about the audience on concrete and abstract terms. And next week, we will talk about subject and purpose. And that will wholly contextualize what we know about the rhetorical situation. And that is where you want to start your instruction, because that will allow all of the rest of the rhetorical analysis, the choices, the appeals, everything else to work together and work together much more clearly than if you just start by teaching ethos, pathos, and logos, which you don't want to even use in your classroom anyway, I don't think, at least. If you want to know why, you can check out that video right up here. If this video was helpful for you, I'm going to ask that you just click like and subscribe, because that's the easiest way to support the Garden of English. On top of that, right, please note that you can follow us on Facebook and like us on Facebook. You can also follow us on Instagram as well. We do sell merch at thegardenofenglish.com. We sell posters and things of that nature. We also sell t-shirts and stickers, and we ask that you consider supporting us in that way. We also have some affiliate links down below for some companies that do indeed also support the Garden of English. We've got Perfection Learning in AMSCO, which is the textbook that I co-authored with Brandon Abden and Lauren Peterson. We have Applied Practice, who I use for mock exams and some other materials. And of course, we have Parlay, who I mentioned at the beginning of the video. I will indeed continue this series with the about the rhetorical situation and scaffolding for that. And we'll get that video out probably within the next few weeks. But once again, this is one of those things where if you're an AP Lang teacher, I encourage you to get these videos in the hands of your freshman teachers or your sophomore teachers and say, maybe we can start here, because that's going to make teaching the choices and the appeals much easier for me, and it will be a lot less confusing for the kids, because we want to scaffold the right way. So I hope you all have a great one, and I look forward to seeing you soon.